Hey folks, so it's Gavin here from Sovereign Empowerment. It's been a long time since I've done a video. I'm back. We've got a series of videos coming out right now, but the first one I wanted to do with you was a conversation with Andrew. Andrew is an individual that we've been helping with the utilities problem. I'm going to let Andrew share his story, but the reason we wanted to do this is we kind of feel that, and Andrew's quite passionate about this as well, is there's a lot of, let's say, bad things going on out there. There's a lot of, let's say, bad things going on out there. People are getting into all sorts of difficulties with the way these utility companies are behaving, which is, one, definitely not lawful, but in Andrew's case, certainly not even legal. And so what I wanted to sort of say is that there's a few groups out there right now. Nothing against these groups, nothing against what they're actually saying to do, but I think there should be a warning with regards to sometimes following this advice whereby you're not aware of all of the implications of doing so. And I'm talking about some of these groups that sort of just, say to rip your meters out, put your own in, we're all free, screw the system, everybody can just carry on and do what they want to do. Now, that's all great, it's all brilliant, but there's a practical reality to that in that the system does still exist. And if you ignore the system, you're going to do so at your own peril, because they will not just let this stuff go. They're corrupt, remember, and they will come for you. And there's all sorts of things that they do. Now, Andrew did something like that, and that whole situation manifested into something that Andrew's going to share very shortly. Now, the good news is Andrew, and he doesn't know I'm going to say this, but I think Andrew's a hero. Andrew's one of the heroes out there that's standing up for truth, standing up for what's right. And he stood his ground when, if I'm being honest with you, he's got children. It would have been very difficult to do so and very easy to capitulate and just give in. But he stood his ground and they have backed off. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to share the story, because there's the negative of what can happen when you ignore the system, but there's also the positive of what can occur when you simply just stand up for the truth and what is right. And Andrew's a living testament to that. So with that said, Andrew, welcome. Do you want to start sharing the story really from beginning to end? Like, let's go through it from, how did it start and what happened?
Yes, so it's pretty much like you said, in the groups, just take your meter out, get it changed, no contract. It seemed as simple as that at the time. So I went ahead, got booked in. Guy came round, very nice guy, swapped all the meter over. Possibly I'd done it the wrong way. Well, I did, obviously. I called the utility company, told them that I'd left the property. So I ended the contract, paid the final bill. Within a few weeks, they started sending letters to the occupier. So I decided to give them a call, just say that their meters were no longer in the property. There was no contract in place. Stop sending the letters. And then within a week or two after that, they were coming round, delivering letters by hand. I think they delivered 2 letters by hand, asking me to call them. This was Haste, then meter investigation company. And then within a week after that, they were at my door, 4 or 5 vans, Haste, the police, armed police. And it went from there, really. It was not a nice experience.
I mean, that's nuts. I mean, guys, let's just kind of frame this right. So Andrew has basically not contracted with this utility provider, right? They're sending letters to the occupier, which clearly isn't him. And that then manifested into armed police turning up at his property. Okay. And this is when there's no contract for any supply to that particular property. He'd done everything right in that regard. So what they're now doing is escalation, a very serious level of escalation. I mean, who the hell wants armed police at their property for utilities? It's ridiculous. So how are you feeling in this situation, given that, you'd sort of done something, you're standing in your truth, you put your own meters in, and now all of a sudden there's bloody armed police outside? Like, what's going through your mind?
Well, I knew what I believed in. I knew what was right. So, I did, like you said, I stood my ground. I went out there, 6'4" copper, gun in one holster, taser in the other. And I argued with him for 2 hours. He was saying he was from the entry team, and he was going to bust my door down if I didn't let them in. So I argued with this guy for 2 hours. Eventually he came back. He obviously spoke to his inspector or someone higher up.
Can I just come in there? Because
Yeah.
this is when we were in contact, weren't we? And you were
No,
saying, was this before?
We were in contact. I think you were busy that day.
This is different. This is the previous. Okay, sorry.
Second visit is when we were on the phone. Yeah,
guys, this gets nuts. Believe me. Sorry, Andrew. Please carry on.
But yeah, I argued with him for 2 hours. Eventually, he came back and he said, you know, he held his hands up. He said he was wrong. He was there just to stop a breach of the peace. And then Hayes then said, "Are you going to let us in?" I said no. At that point, I was in front of the door. They said I'd have to move out the way. I said to the policeman, if I stay here, are you going to arrest me? He said yes, he was. Since found out, no, he wouldn't have been able to do that. And then they spent the next 3 or 4 hours drilling the locks and trying to get in.
Now that was when you were sort of arguing with the police. This was where you were sort of saying, you know, for case law as pertains to them not able to force entry, and the police officer was absolutely ignorant to that case law. Yeah. And it took you arguing and pushing for that individual to get on the phone to his supervisor hours later to confirm that fact. And despite confirming that fact, he was still willing to stand there and allow the staff of Hoist, wasn't it? Haste, to still force entry. So there's a police officer being made aware of the case law as pertains to not being able to force entry, standing by while a company does exactly that. Yeah. There's the state of policing these days, right? I mean, that in itself to me blows my mind that they wouldn't even have assisted you. They're standing there assisting them when they're actually also serving a fake warrant, aren't they? Because they showed you some document on an iPad, which they cannot do.
Yeah.
You know, and we're now starting to get evidence together to prove that there is no warrant. There's no record of anything there. Okay, so we won't go into that right now. That's a separate matter. So what happened after that? Because you were literally holding that door closed, weren't you, to stop them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't prepared, obviously, for them turning up that day. I had a bit of wood holding the bottom of the door, going to it in a door frame. And once I saw him drill the locks, he then started, because he still wouldn't get in after doing that, so he started cutting the handle off. He's cut all the door. Once I saw him doing that, I thought I'd better get in, you know, and defend my castle. Simple as that. So I got in there. Next minute, he starts then pushing the door. And, you know, the door was open maybe 8 inches at the top. You know, he almost took it off the hinges. And I was behind it, holding it. My mum was there with me, holding it. Girls were in the bedroom, wondering what the hell was going on. It was, yeah.
Sorry, I had it on mute there. I mean, this is terrible that this is even going on. This is your own property. You're not contracted to this particular utility provider, yet they've lied to have that company there at your door, which, by the way, is also something that we can deal with because it's a separate company who are serving a warrant. What's it got to do with them? They're a third-party interloper. None of this stuff is legal, by the way, guys, but yet it was actually happening. So you're literally holding this door shut for hours, weren't you, to stop them basically getting in? And that really, and all the while the police are sitting there watching it happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, the policeman, the locksmith told me that the police ordered him to start pushing the door in once he couldn't get through by drilling the locks. I mean, so it's just waiting for the DSAR to come back from the police just to find out if that is all true. So
yeah, we're on that one there. So a few hours later, they gave up, right?
6 hours later, they gave up and all walked off.
This is 6 hours of literally holding the bloody door closed, and then they gave up, right? And so that was that. It was a few weeks later, wasn't it? Or a few days later, you started to see sort of vans circling and sort of almost spying on the property.
There was a couple of vans pulled up. It was they were watching what was going on. Someone was taking pictures of the property. And then I went on holiday for a week, which was probably the most nerve-wracking holiday I've ever been on.
Yeah.
And it was about 5 weeks later they came back again. Just turned up unannounced, had no warning.
And this time they had a digger, didn't they? Because this time they were going to cut you off from outside, from the street. Yeah. Which, by the way, guys, again, Andrew's got children. They can't do this stuff. They cannot do what they were going to do, but yet they were going to do it. And I remember that day because we were on the phone to the digger driver himself, weren't we?
No, it was UKPN, UK Power Network.
UK Power Networks turned up. And they turned up because the utility company lied and said that there was an emergency situation at the property.
They said it was an emergency situation and it was a commercial premises.
This is someone's home and they've done this. I mean, this is ridiculous that this is even happening. So they're there then, and I remember then we were on the phone to that digger driver. So do you want to explain how that played out? Because he had a crisis of conscience in the end, didn't he?
Yeah, no, well, they did. Yeah, the digger driver, UKPN, really nice people. That they could see exactly where we were coming from with it, and they understood it. Digger driver, once he found out the situation, he said, you know, he'd been called down there to a commercial premises as far as he was aware. He had no idea it was a house with children in it. And he says, I'm not happy to dig the road, you know, cut them off. And when you were speaking to these guys on the phone, you know, I could see it resonating with him, you know, everything that you were saying. But even you struggled, didn't you, when you were speaking to him? He was just, as in his head, he was just doing as is told by haste. Sorry.
No, go carry on, please.
He had haste in the background, just constantly saying to him, just dig, time to dig now. Come on, let's just dig. You know,
and this is what's nuts about that situation, because you've got these different organisations and people, okay, where they're all ignorant as to what's really going on. You know, he thought he's turning up to deal with a commercial premises, and it turns out to be a residential property. And we're communicating the fact that you've got kids in that property and that he's liable for his own actions, his own choices. You can't just sit there and say, I'm just doing my job or doing what I'm told. And he was under a lot of pressure on that day, wasn't he? And you're right. I was talking to that guy, and it didn't feel like it was sinking in, and I was losing hope. And I was, to be honest, I was really despondent, because I was thinking, how can it be this way, that people can see what's going on and in their own mind they're willing to overlook that and still go and do something that's wrong? Yeah. And then, honestly, I mean, I know you were going through it, but that really hit me that day, because I just thought this is a sign of the things that are coming. But then within an hour or so of me putting the phone down to him, he changed his mind. He decided he wasn't going to do it. Yeah,
UKPN, they came back up and said, look, we just want to check that our equipment, the main fuse and the cutout, is safe. Will you allow us in just to have a look? That's when I called you back then. I said, you know, they're asking to come back in. Haste was stood well away, so I thought, yeah, why not? And you agreed with me, didn't you? So we let them in, they checked it all and said it was all safe. And away they went, yeah. Haste were not very happy.
Clearly not very happy, because we'd scuppered their plans. But that was, I mean, I think sometimes appealing to human nature is the right way to go, because we can cite legislation, all these different things, but it comes across as a bit of attack, and sometimes people can sort of dig in their heels because they feel like they're being attacked. But you know, we appeal to his human side, and clearly it works. So we ruined Haste's plans on that particular day, and then the supervisor got involved, didn't he? He started talking to you. So what was happening from there?
He called himself the trainer. He's a trainer, and I mean, so these guys were there for 12 hours that day, and I went up to the van, and one of the guys were on the phone to this James trainer from Haste. And I could hear what the conversation was all about from outside the van, because he had it on the loudspeaker. And he was saying how he's got certain people within his company who are unwilling to come to these kind of jobs because they're worried about what they're having to say and what they're having to do to the customers. So that just spoke volumes to me, that there is people in their company who know what they're doing wrong.
I think it's a great sign of the times. We are coming to this tipping moment. I think we can see it. But I think the other point to say, guys, if you are in a situation where you have changed your meters and you are getting under pressure by these utility companies, it's to stand your ground. Do not capitulate. Do not let them in. Hold the fort, as it were. That's actually quite a good analogy. And make sure you put some bolts on your doors on the inside, because you didn't have them at the time, did you? Which is why you were having to hold it. So had you the bolts on there, that would have made their job a damn sight harder, wouldn't it? And probably would have given up a lot quicker, because they knew they couldn't actually get in. So if you are in that sort of situation, or you feel like you're going to get into that situation, get some bolts on the inside of the door and bolt your property, okay? You can also buy lock, pick and drill proof locks to put on your property. So the bottom line, guys, if they can't drill your locks, they can't push the door open, they can't get in. And if you've changed your meters and you brought the meters inside, you are now protected. But just know you're in for a bit of a battle and a fight. So it still pays to know the ins and outs of what's really going on so you can actually properly deal with it. So what's happened since then? Because we've had some really good news come out of all of this.
Yeah, so I mean, we did have another visit after that. James from Haste wanted to meet me in a neutral location, just to talk, he said. So I did. I ended up asking him a load of questions and kind of turned it round on him. He ended up walking out because, you know, I didn't back down. I wasn't going to let him in the house. And then since then, we found out that they are in talks with the UKPM, and they're waiting for a safety report back from them. So I don't know what the next step is, but you know, I've done it 3 times. I've held them off 3 times, so I'll take it as it comes.
So UK power networks, I mean, if they are honourable and they're true to what they confirmed on the day, that report should come back that there are no safety issues, which would be a very powerful turn of events, because we literally would have then stopped or prevented any further action from either the utility company or Haste, because ultimately they can't get in, they can't do anything, basically, you know, so that would have ended the problem. So quite keen to see how that actually plays out. We have got a few things underway to deal with them legally if we have to, but we've put a bit of a pause on that, haven't we, for now? So question for you, Andrew. Actually, I've not asked you this question. I think it's quite a good one for folks out there, that there are lots of people that are now becoming aware of, you know, the situation we're in this world, and the situation with regards to certain bills that we've been paying for a long time that we now know we don't really need to pay. What would you say to those folks, given your own experience of finding some of these Telegram groups, you know, being aware of it and then doing the things you've done? If you could have your time again, what would you do differently?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I would have still changed the meters. I perhaps wouldn't have almost been so cocky about it and called them up saying your meter's no longer in here, because that kind of sped the process up. People, you need to get a grips of what's going to happen. You need to understand all the legislations, and just get a good, you know, inner standing, I suppose, of, you know, what you're doing. Don't just rush into it, and because they do come down on hard on you very quickly.
Yeah, it's like a red rag to a bull kind of thing, isn't it? Like, and I can understand why we want to sort of go, hey, you know, I'm free, here's your meters, come get them, but the consequences are not really worth going through unless you know what you're doing, right? So cool. On that point, I want to just sort of offer some advice to folks in that you can deal with it. Okay, you can change your meters, you can deal with it properly, and you can hold them away. You can actually have them cease and desist, but you need to know what you're doing. Now, to know what you're doing requires study and research and some time. So if you're going to do something like that, my advice is buy yourself the time. Okay, and how do you do that? Well, use the system itself, right? So you can agree like a £10 per month payment, as an example. So if you know you're going to do it and you want to get into the fight, as it were, and stand in that truth, why not just go to them and agree that £10 a month payment? Now, you simply, if you've got no income, and this is actually true for a lot of people now anyway, if your income's drastically dropped, if it's actually ceased completely, you don't have to pay the bill in the way for whatever the figure would be. You can agree a monthly payment of say £10. We've been assisting folks that have got that down to £1 a month. Now, if you're paying that kind of figure per month, you've drastically reduced the outgoings, which obviously helps you day to day. But equally, you've bought yourself the time you now need to do the study required to actually do it properly, to remove the meters, to give them notice properly, to handle it properly and keep them at bay. And that way round, not to say it wouldn't be painful, because they're still going to do what they do, but you know how to fight, you know how to defend yourself properly, you know how to even go on the attack and end it. Okay, so I guess that's the only advice I can give, because we're helping quite a lot of folks now that have been doing that stuff and have got themselves into a bit of that pickle, and they don't really know what to do. And it's even harder, isn't it, Andrew, where the ignorance in the system is at such a level they don't even know what the legislation is and isn't, and you know, they don't even know what they're supposed to be doing. So the police are just standing by and basically rubber stamping what these other idiots are actually doing, you know. So all I'm saying is, don't take it lightly. You know, we are free. This is a corrupt system. We know all of that stuff. but take it seriously because the system will still come for you. And if you don't know how to defend yourself and you don't know how to go on the attack, it's going to bite you in the arse. Okay. Any sort of advice, Andrew, to anyone else out there, with it, not even just about utilities, but just this whole thing in general of just being aware of things and dealing with it?
Yeah, I mean, I've woken up slowly over the last 10 years. I'm fully aware of everything that's going on now. And I've noticed a lot, we all seem to be coming together now. And I think that's what's needed. And there's lots of groups being set up, groups on Telegram where people can go for help as well. And it's just, I think that's what it is. We just all need to come together now and just stand your ground. Don't back down. Believe in what you're saying.
I agree. I mean, and it is actually that simple. It's just people power, you know, and there's a lot of these different groups now coming together. I do feel that there needs to be more cohesion. And I don't know whether I mean, I think we actually do know there's a lot of different groups and, you know, different sides within this whole kind of awakened movement that I don't think is conducive to doing the things that we need to do, you know. So there perhaps needs to be more coming together with that and more of a kind of a collective aim in terms of how we're going to deal with things. But I think you're right. Well, there's a tipping point coming, isn't it? We can feel the energy shifting and things are definitely changing. We can see it happening with the councils. We can now see it happening with the utility companies and certainly with other companies that we're focused on, like with debt companies, debt collection agents, etc. We are winning, guys. Okay. If you're on your own in the fight, just know that you're not on your own. We are definitely winning. So just keep doing what you're doing and keep standing for that truth. Andrew, thank you. Thanks for giving your time and sharing your story. I really appreciate it. We'll keep you updated as to what happens going forward, guys, because this is definitely not over yet. We're in the fight and we're going to deal with it. And with that said, I will be doing an update video because I'm back now to doing content. So there'll be an update video and we've got a series of videos coming out, one of which will be utilities. We've got a video with instructions on how to regain control of your bank accounts, how to use the system to verify that you are a living human being, a man or a woman. There's quite a lot of good stuff, very simple tips and tricks that we can employ right now that don't require any type of research, that we can just easily do, that starts to protect us from the system. So if we can start doing that and we can start becoming ghosts in the system, it makes it harder for them to find you and do the things like they do. And that in turn buys you time to study and learn and get ready for the fight at hand. So thank you, guys. We'll see you soon. And Andrew, thanks very much.
No problem.
Cheers.